Hey everybody, welcome to the check-in. I'm JJ Sexton. I'm here with Danielle Moody. Show where a couple friends hang out on their lunch break and talk about living in a time of increasing fascism. Danielle, I was thinking about this broadcast today. I don't even know if we have anything to talk about. Nothing's happening. It doesn't
Nope.
feel like anything. There's no
Very
emotional
stagnant.
It's so stagnant, and there's no emotional reaction to it or psychological reaction to it. It good times, great oldies. How are you, my friend?
You know, I will say I always love our check-ins because I think that it's the time when I get to be super honest with myself and super honest with you. And how am I doing? I will say that yesterday was an absolute fucking struggle. Like I was on the struggle bus. I was like, you know what? These white nationalists want this country. They want to destroy everything. Go do it. Go do it. Like you want to kill everybody. You want to lynch everybody. You want to burn everything down. You want to be at war. Have at it. I think that I reach, and a lot of us reach these moments throughout the day, throughout each week, throughout each month that we're slugging through all of this, where our capacity to hold the bullshit just breaks, right? It's like, in my, I will pun intended, the dam breaks open, right? Like, and you just can't hold it anymore. And yesterday was one of those days where I was just like, I am losing my capacity to give a shit, right? Like, if I have to convince you that, like, you're not voting your way out of this, if I have to convince you that, like, we're not going about business as usual, even though capitalism requires us to continue to grind and produce while everything is crumbling around us, like, I don't have the capacity to, like, go into your house and pry everybody's eyes open like it's Clockwork Orange. Like, I just don't have the fucking ability. And so yesterday I felt exhausted, depressed, just like really lethargic. Today I got up and I actually shared this on Blue Sky that I worked out for the first time in like 6 months. Went in, I do F45 and I haven't done it in like 645 in like 6 months. And it's like functional training. And it was just great to be around people. It was great to sweat. It was great to like, get out of my head for 45 minutes and just be in my body focusing on the next rep, the next thing. Um so yeah, it's like we have to challenge ourselves to pull ourselves out of what feels like it feels like we're living in what was it in the Princess Bride? What was the forest called?
The nothing?
No, that was
Oh, I'm
that was
thinking
the
about
never-ending
Neverending
story.
Story.
That was the
Yeah,
never-ending story. In the forest and the Princess Bride, somebody in the chat will know.
somebody's got it.
But it was called something, and that's what it feels like every turn. It's like there's the giant rodent, there's the fucking quicksand, there's like like that's what it feels like every day. And so, yeah, my friend, it's been a lot. It's been a lot for all of us. How are you doing? The fire swamp. Thank
The
you.
fire swamp. There we go. No,
Thank you.
thank you. Um, you know, I have a lot of things to say. I think in terms of like thinking that this is going to be a lot of different things, and then we're gonna have to like go through the because it's so much.
Yes.
It's so much. I'll just start with like a little bit of verbal processing. First things first, I want to give you credit because last Wednesday, the day that all this went down, you had said that you had a feeling that we might even be a few hours from like the shit really hitting the fan and things changing.
Hmm.
And I remember walking away and I was like, I don't know if it's like a few hours. I don't really know. And then I was on a call and shit went down. So congrats, I guess.
For being like a
For
soothsayer,
yeah, congratulations, I
I guess.
suppose. I appreciate that you got me and like a few thousand people prepared for it, I guess. But no, you know, before we like go in on all the different things and the self-care and the way that we sort of think about this stuff, I I just I want to put this out there because so much shit went down so fast.
Yes.
And, you have the assassination. For a couple of hours, we don't know if Charlie Kirk is alive or dead. Immediately, the right goes off the deep end. It's obviously a trans shooter. It's obviously a deep state, demonic conspiracy.
Yep.
Within minutes, Danielle, and I know you keep track of this stuff, they're calling for killing people. They're calling for literally destroying their political opposition and rigging the entirety of American democracy. Like that was immediate without even one piece of
No
evidence
investigation.
or any
No.
context.
Yep.
Then I'm like following, I spent a lot of time researching the far right. So I go on their channels. I go into their chats with my burner accounts, and they're celebrating because all they want is everything to burn down because they can't win elections. And all they want is for America to fall apart so they can take advantage and create, a nihilistic, violent ethno state, right? They want to create like a new Third Reich. Then all of a sudden, another component of this comes out where you see every liberal commentator just absolutely drooling on their shoes over Charlie Kirk, lying to us,
Yep.
literally gaslighting us, telling us that this person was such a paragon of civil debate and that, like, oh, this obviously has to do with the rhetoric. And literally, it's people like you and me who are saying, hey, not only are they murdering people, they're taking away everyone's rights and they're planning on doing more. And they're like, oh, we need to be more civil. And by the way, fuck those people. Then there's another component of this, like, it's the guy who was live streaming on TikTok immediately after, and he's there like moments after Charlie Kirk has been assassinated. Like, he's live streaming it with his phone, telling people to follow him on TikTok. And what happened here,
Wow.
what I've come to understand, and this is something that you and I have talked about, but we haven't named it. And something became very clear to me, and I think this clarity helps, and I think it will help frame what we're talking about. Danielle, I want to say it definitively. What we're dealing with right now is that the United States of America is in a collective mental breakdown. Period. Period. We are having a collective mental breakdown. And that fact, I think, is at the heart of all of this. Everything that we're dealing with right now is literally insane. And that
Yes.
insanity, there are those of us who recognize it and we want to do something about it. And there are other people, they're like, let's go fucking crazy. Let's see what we can do. Let's see how far we can take it. And that collective mental breakdown, it's not healthy to be around it.
Mm-mm.
It is, and we can talk about our own reactions to it. We talked about it a little bit before we started recording. It is the fact that it's the equivalent of being in a house with a person who is unwell, and being around them makes you feel unwell. And
Yep.
it starts to make your entire existence feel unwell, except for as of right now, there's no leaving the house. And
Mm-mm.
that feeling, that sort of, it really animated everything that has happened, not just over the like past week, but over the past couple of decades. That it has been building and building and building. But I just want to start there by saying it's not one thing, it's not two things, it's everything. Everything right now is absolutely fucking insane, which I just want to say, which is why I'm glad that we're here talking. Period.
Yeah. I mean, yes, yes, yes. And that is why it is so important to recognize that you're living in an insane asylum, right?
Yep.
That you're not crazy for recognizing that everything that is happening and every reaction to all of the things that are happening is batshit nuts.
Yep.
Right? Like, and I think that what is happening is just like when you're trying to find some piece of reality, find some piece of like collective, out, like, can we not agree on like the fact that this is all bananas? And you can't because you're looking, I mean, Jared, I did not watch it. I saw clips of JD Vance sliding in to Charlie Kirk's seat, the vice president of the United States, hosting a podcast,
Yep.
right? Charlie Kirk has not even, let's just be clear about how disgusting that move was, that he hasn't even been buried. And JD Vance was already trying to take over his space and place. And
Danielle,
here's the thing.
that I watched, and it was within an hour of him being shot. Maybe not even an hour. Alex Jones was angling to take over his
Right.
college tour. Ben Shapiro was
Ben
looking to
Shapiro,
take over
like
Turning Point.
every
Yes,
one of those people were
yes,
clamoring for
yes.
this audience that I just want to tell folks too, because I said this yesterday on the Danielle Moody show, that like Turning Point USA is not some grassroots organization.
No.
It was an organization that was built and funded by right-wing billionaires in order to take over the minds of young
Yep.
people. Because what they felt and what they have always felt, which is why one of the first actions that Donald Trump has done is go after universities and go after colleges,
Yep.
is that when you allow for critical thought to be a part of young people's lives, then they start asking real questions, and it's less likely that they're going to find themselves agreeing with right-wing stances and right-wing politics. And so they pump tens of millions of dollars into Turning Point USA and using Charlie Kirk, this mediocre white man, as their tool to engage young people, create these, different trends and blah, 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 and go into and invade college campuses, right? Under the guise of debate. But if you're debating my humanity and my existence, that is not a matter of
Thanks,
opinion.
babes.
That is a right-wing ideology that you are now allowing on your college campus to spread. So I think that, watching these men clamor for his position, and I'm like, and the body's not even cold, was probably one of the most craven things I have seen. And the fact, again, that no one called that out. No one said, my God, like, I get it. This is your guy. Like, you have the right to mourn, right? But my God, it was so disgusting. Like the opportunist nature of MAGA is it's like it's cannibalistic in the way that it's just like, oh, he's gone, great, like slide in, take over the audience. And then we don't have to talk about Epstein, by the way, because that's exactly what Charlie Kirk was talking about, as well as talking about Israel and Gaza, two of the things that are like lightning rods for this administration. Now JD Vance gets to sit down, turn on a microphone, and parade in all of Trump's stormtroopers and change the narrative for this young audience. I'm like, how does no one see this and no one is calling this out?
I'm so glad that you brought this up, because here is where, so we started this off being like, holy fuck, everything is insane, right? There's madness over here, there's madness over here. One of the things that helps me, and I don't know if it helps you or the people who are watching, it's breaking down something that seems inconceivable and confusing and overwhelming into parts. Right? So I said we're having a collective breakdown. Well, let's talk about the different parts of that collective breakdown. First things first, you brought up like Turning Point USA and where the money comes from all of this. The people who fund Turning Point USA, do you know what else they fund? They happen to fund the abundance movement, in which Ezra Klein is trying to take over the Democratic Party in order to turn them into the Republican Party of the late 90s, early 2000s. So then all of a sudden you watch Ezra Klein talk about how Charlie Kirk did politics right. Why did Ezra Klein write that article, Danielle? He wrote that article because the entirety of his multi-million-dollar funding is from the people who paid Charlie Kirk. So he has a permanent, I believe, two articles, an article and an interview in the New York Times every single week.
Yep.
That has basically become his fundraising apparatus for making his abundance movement, which is about pleasing billionaires. It
Yep.
has become his sales pitch. Why does he talk to right wing extremists? Because the people who fund them are now funding Ezra Klein. So then all of a sudden it's like, oh, why in the hell would he do this? He's doing it for the money.
Money.
And then all of a sudden you start looking at the people that you're talking about who are trying to take advantage of Charlie Kirk's death. Danielle, quick pop quiz. Was the Trump administration talking about cracking down on liberal groups and liberal funding apparatus before Charlie Kirk was killed?
No.
Yes, they were.
I mean,
they,
they were, but not, I will say this,
no,
not with the vehemence and
they
not with the war language. They've
exactly.
been doing it, but I mean, the escalation is what I
But the
meant. The
escalation,
escalation.
do you know what it reminds me of, Danielle?
What?
It reminds me of prior to September 11th, 2001, how everybody who would eventually become the Bush administration were talking about the need to attack Iraq. They talked about it well before September 11th, and then September 11th happened, and all of a sudden, Iraq, Iraq, Iraq. These people, they're snakes, and they
Yeah.
are opportunists. This has nothing to do with people who fund the Democratic Party. This has nothing to do with the think tanks and institutes. And by the way, almost every think tank and institute associated with the Democratic Party at this point right now, they're funded by the same people who funded Turning Point USA. And on top of that, they're all telling the Democratic Party to move away from black and brown people and gay
Yep.
people
And
and women.
DEI and they yes. Yep.
They're all doing that now. So what happened, there's a different type of insanity here, because when we say insane, we have these like stereotypes of like, people who need to be institutionalized. That's what we're told by culture. Insanity is not just people acting quote unquote insane. Sociopathy is insane.
Yes.
Being a craven opportunist is insane. Watching Donald Trump say, "Oh, I miss my friend Charlie Kirk," and then talking about the ballroom at the White House is insane. The entire point is this: there are so many different ways that people are being insane right now. Some of them are sharks. And you know what happens when sharks reveal themselves to be sharks? You say, hey, I don't want anything to do with this. You are frightening and scary, and there's something fundamentally missing from you. There are other people who are freaked out, and so they're doing freaked out things. There are other people who are living in denial. Sometimes dysfunction is very, very loud, and sometimes dysfunction is very, very quiet.
Yeah.
And so what we're dealing with right now is a very complicated information and emotional structure that nobody talks about. None of this stuff gets discussed. And instead, we get to treat someone who was prejudiced and anti-democratic as some sort of saint, as if like that's how we should behave. But instead, it gets clarified, it gets homogenized, and then over here you have like the harder, bigger truth, which no one wants to sit with because it's much more complicated and it takes thought as opposed to emotional reaction, which is a large part of the problem right now.
Well, you are somebody who is so steeped in history. And what I said last week following all of this was that this was going to be their Reichstag fire, that this was going to be their raison d'entrée, that it was going to be a escalation of militarization, a crackdown on free speech. It was going to be all of these things. And we're watching it play out in real time. And for those that are like, well, what is that? It was, the fire that happened in 1933 that was blamed on a communist that is now like up in the air. And it was and Hitler used that fire and that a person who was named as the arsonist at that time to suspend civil liberties, right? And amass all of the power in Germany so that he could begin the Third Reich, which would then move us into World War II. And when you look at Donald Trump's actions, when you look at this regime's actions, you have multiple things are happening at one time. You got bombing of Venezuelan boats,
Yep.
right? You have the escalation in violent language. You have Stephen Miller getting on television saying that there is no Democratic Party, that I don't even remember what he said, but it was just something so off, like the fucking, you know, bonkers, right? That he said it was like a terrorist organization that needs to be taken out, right? Like, you hear all of this language that is being thrown around, and that is happening. And then you had, you had two lynchings that happened
Yep.
in Mississippi,
ICE
where
murdered a guy.
the cops are trying to tell us that there is no foul play. And I just want to break this down, because you have a Black man, a college student, 21 years old at Delta State University, who was found hanging from a tree in the center of university, right? I will just say this as I said it yesterday. Black people don't hang themselves from trees. That's not what we do. That is what is done to us. The second person was a homeless man, a white man, who was also hung from a tree. Do you know what rhetoric was amped up to millions of people last week by Brian Kilmeade on Fox News, who said about the homeless population that we should just use
Kill him.
lethal injection, just kill them and get rid of them? And everyone thinks it's a fucking coincidence that then a homeless man is hung from a tree? And an encampment was broken into the other day, yesterday at the end of the day, and two unhoused people were shot in the head. And we think that these things are not connected to the language that is being put out there. And so I just like the moment that we're in, Jared, is so fire hot. And there was a minister, not a minister, a Muslim scholar, who said this past week, he goes, what happened now, what has been done with this killing of Charlie Kirk is that you've turned this singular fire into hot embers that have now spread all over the country, right? Because you listen to Charlie Kirk's wife and her insane speech that she gave, that was like, all I said, Jared, if a Black mother, wife, after the murder of her husband, were to ever get on television and say the hot shit that that woman said, do you understand what would happen to her? What would happen to the family? What would happen to that community? And so I just, what is being weaponized right now? Grief, trauma, just all of these things, and the gaslighting that is happening about who is responsible for all of this. They went so far as to remove a report from the White House website yesterday that says that right-wing violence is the main cause of domestic terrorism in this country. And they just removed it. Like, they think that just removing it is going to make us what? Not believe our eyes and ears? So it's just, we're living in an insane asylum that is on fire with the doors locked, trying to find our fucking way out.
I agree. And you said so much there that I think has sort of been missed in a lot of this analysis. In the past week, since this killing, we've had lynchings, and ICE literally murdered a person in Chicago. That, and by the way, like, you and I have talked about this, and other people who cover this stuff, we said eventually ICE is going to kill somebody, and maybe that would be the turning point. Well, here we are. It's not even a story. It didn't even like bubble up to the surface. And I think when it comes to what we're talking about here, and by the way, the lynching, there was like a song that went viral which gave instructions on how to lynch, like right before all of this stuff happened. And you're right about Kill Me talking about murdering people. And by the way, that isn't what sets it off. That might be what like lights the fire and then it takes off. How have we been talking about this? How have we been treating it? Everyone from Gavin Newsom to, basically everyone's just like, well, we just need to get rid of the homeless population. We just need to move them over here and do this. And I want to say a couple things before we get into the personal and the sort of mental well-being aspect of it, which is we can't just deny what's going on here. We can't just say, oh, we need to have better debate or we need to have more civility. That's not it. I got asked this the other day. They were like, do you think the rhetoric's playing a part in it? And I was like, no, the rhetoric should be heightened. These are fascists. These are murderers.
Yeah.
They are literally fighting right now an existential battle to destroy democracy and gain total power. And to sit here and say, oh, I think we should cool things down. They're not cooling things down. It's not going to stop. You can't just say, oh, this stuff is just, it'll go away if we just become small. Because right now we are in an existential battle. And I think there's something to calling it out for what it is. Danielle, we're in this situation because the powers that be, including Republicans and Democrats and our media, have championed decades of precarity. They have put all of us in a pressure cooker. And by the way, that's been great for business, not just profits, but keeping us in jobs that we don't want to do, living lives that we don't want to live. On top of that, it's almost interesting that this radicalization has coincided with the rise of social media that incentivizes radicalization. So if you actually take a look at this and people say, what should we do? It's not just about fighting a political battle. It's about starting to make part of our conversation. I really think big tech needs to be reined in. I really think anybody who runs for a position of power should talk about redistribution of wealth because they've taken trillions of dollars from us. So if you are going to be a leader in this country, you have to call out the lawlessness, you have to call out the corruption, and you have to say, guess what? If I'm given power, and good for people like Zoran Mamdani, who says, if elected, I'm going to change shit. And I'm going to, tax these people in order to make people's lives better. So are we going to address the problem in the room, which is that we are all on these systems that are programmed to radicalize us? And programmed to make us unwell, and capitalism is a system that is wired to make us unwell. So that's one thing, is start talking about this. Don't just do the headlines. This happened, this happened, this happened. Start talking about why this shit is happening.
Yes.
Why in the
Yes.
world did we arrive at this point? And what that does, and I keep thinking, Danielle, I keep thinking about how many times I've been around people who are having a hard time, right? And when you're having a conversation, you're not having a conversation about what's really going on. You're having a conversation about the story. And I've done this, I'm guilty of this. Sometimes we don't know why we feel the things we feel. Sometimes we don't know why we're activated. Sometimes we don't know why we're having a hard time. We create stories that tell us why we're having a hard time. So we can't allow ourselves to be drugged into this madness. We can't catch the fleas of the people who are doing this and the people who are suffering.
That's right.
So we have to somehow or another ground ourselves and say, hey, and by the way, you brought up the fact that this thing was spread everywhere. It was spread everywhere. For a day, you could not escape footage of a person being murdered. That's not good
For
for
a
us.
day, I feel like it has.
Oh, a
I mean,
week.
for the week.
Danielle, how many times did you see, and maybe this is because I studied this stuff, I watched so many videos of it being slowed down, different angles, people
Yeah.
looking for the conspiracy theories.
I had to stop. I saw 2 videos and then I was just like, I don't understand. And again, but that this is exactly what you're talking about in terms of these tech platforms wanting to radicalize and
Yeah.
wanting to suck us in, is that there were no warnings. There were no warnings that were coming through your feed that were or covering the fucking videos. Meanwhile, they'll pull down images of the genocide happening in Gaza, but they won't fucking stop the images of that man being shot. And so I'm just and it was the same thing with George Floyd. It was the same thing. Like the algorithm just kept churning and churning and churning, right? Um, and you say like, oh, well, it'll come to like the regulation of these platforms. They were just at the White House having dinner with Donald Trump.
Well, okay, I have a question for you because this is something I can't help but think about. So we were talking about everyone trying to take over Charlie Kirk's platform and get in on his business, selling merchandise. I mean, the quickness
Well,
of this. Let's talk about this. Let's say that you're in charge of Twitter. Let's say that you are part of Elon Musk's like inner circle who's running that platform. You're in meetings after this takes place. Everyone is sharing the footage of the murder. Everybody is talking about it. The right wing is discussing persecuting their political enemies. Are you having a conversation where you're like, oh, this is problematic? Or are you ecstatic because the platform was being used for that? So, what are you doing? You're allowing capitalism and financial incentive to dehumanize everything. And that doesn't just happen at that level. The people who are calling for persecuting Democrats and persecuting liberals and carrying out sectarian violence and coups and, rounding people up, you know what happens when they post that stuff? Their hits go through the
yeah,
roof.
yeah,
They're financially incentivized to do that.
right.
So their rhetoric becomes bigger and bigger. Oh, all of a sudden I had something went viral because I called for rounding up
So
Democrats
now I'm
and
going to
killing
keep
them.
doing it
Oh,
and I'm
now
going to
I got
make
to
it
do another
bigger.
one.
Yep.
Oh, now I got to do another one. So what happens in all of this is that we are removed from basic human compassion and empathy. And guess what? I study the far right. Something changed for me last week, Danielle. I used to spend days upon days in these chat rooms watching neo-Nazis and white supremacists talk about violence. I used to tell myself, oh, it doesn't affect me. It's just research. Within a half hour, I was like, this sucks. And it is affecting me as a person. I
Yep.
don't feel good. We are so detached from our emotions that we don't realize that we are being traumatized second by second by second. And what we've all been dealing with over the past week, it's not just gaslighting. It's not just dealing with a threat from an activated state, like, oh my God, they're coming for us. We have been stewing in a culture with a financial incentive to traumatize us.
Hmm.
We are supposed to be traumatized by this. It's their product. And we've become addicted to that trauma and that state of activation. That's why this has to eventually be brought down. Has to.
I mean, this is the reason. I mean, that I'm so happy that you shared what was happening to you in even when you were in research mode, doing research on the right, but like being steeped in that rhetoric and that kind of sewer mentality and what and how it seeps in. Because that's one of the reasons why I stopped watching the news. I stopped watching the news because there was one day, Jared, and this is like before the election, and I had on the TV in the background and it's just, running through all of the shows. And I'm washing the dishes and I'm like getting angrier and angrier throughout the time that I'm washing the dishes. And I'm like, what's happening? Right? Why is my body chemistry literally, I'm tightening up, right? Like, why is my body chemistry changing?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden I realized that I had never turned the TV off. And while I wasn't actively watching it, it was seeping into me.
Yep.
And my cortisol levels were going through the roof. And like all the nerve endings were just like boop, 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 boop on me.
Yep.
And so that's how I recognized that I was like, oh, I can't do this. But it is the same thing, if not worse, on social media, which one you and I both use for work, right? Like when we post things, we write things, we share things, we post videos, you want to see how they're doing, and you get caught,
Yep.
right? In that scrolling. And then all of a sudden you're just like, wait a minute, you look up how much time has passed. right? Like how much of my soul and my spirit has been like zapped out because I've taken in bad headline after bad headline, crazy story after crazy story. And by the end of the day, you feel absolutely nuts. Like the walls are closing in and you literally can't breathe. And so, like, I think that one, to those points, I need for people to be, everyone watching and that will watch this after, to be conscious. Like this is when we talk about being quote unquote woke, like this is what I'm talking about, being conscious of like what you're ingesting. And it doesn't mean then to become a political ostrich and bury your head in the sand and pretend these things aren't happening, but it means to limit your exposure to what is happening so that you can have clarity around what it is that you can and should be doing with the platform, the resources, right? And the skill set that you have. Because if you're constantly ingesting, all you end up doing is reacting to what is being done as opposed to developing the strategy for how we take this shit down. And that's why what Steve Bannon said those years ago about flooding the zone, about the shock, right? The shock doctrine, right? And the consistent shocking of people disorients you, discombobulates you, and doesn't allow you to find your grounding. It doesn't allow you to clear your mind to figure out what are the steps to do next, right? And this is terrorism. This is
Yes.
what this regime is doing. This is terrorizing the American people so that we remain in shock, in awe, and
Yep.
don't know which way is up and which way is down, right? And you're just locked in this asylum, you're locked in this place, and you don't know how to get out. And because you are so torn asunder, because it's taking so much energy, so much spirit and hopelessness, you end up disconnecting yourself from other people because now you've been fed this constant diet that everyone around you is terrible, right? Your neighbors, the girl, you can't trust anybody. And that means that we pull in as opposed to actually lean in and be building community in the analog type of way in real fucking life.
And let me introduce people to a concept that if they're not aware of it, I'm telling you, this is one of the most vital things that people can understand, and that is dissociation. What is happening is that whether we're aware of it or not, we're such amazing creatures. There are times where, like, I think about what humanity is and what we're capable of. You talk to someone you love and they surprise you. You know what I mean? Like you've known
Yeah.
them for years, and then they say something that is like so, like you didn't know that they could say something like that, and you're like, oh my god, humanity's incredible. We don't understand ourselves. We do not understand our brains. We do not understand how we go through life. And whether we realize it or not, we can enter into a dissociated state so easy. It's so easy just, and we have machines now that are completely designed to put us in a dissociated state. They're literally supposed to put us to sleep at a lower level of functioning. And what happens at that lower level of functioning? You can numb out, which is freeze, or you can fight, or you can flight. There's all kinds of these different ways that we react to it from a evolutionary standpoint. And what you just brought up is the most important matter with this, which is authoritarianism is essentially just a mental breakdown at a level, at a societal, political, and power
Mm.
level. So here's the thing. I spent so much time reading accounts of the rise of Nazism, life during Nazism, and especially life after Nazism. And if
Mm.
you read the oral accounts of what it was like from the people who supported the Nazi party after it was over, they said, I don't know why I did it. I don't exactly know looking back now why I did it. And people like to say, oh, Hitler's speeches hypnotized them. That's not what it was. It was the way that the culture hypnotized them. You walk down the street and every couple of blocks you saw a swastika. You saw these big giant, like big things. Your radio, that's the reason why fascism happened in the first place, was because they took over radio.
Yep.
And it was like one of the first mass media devices, and they knew how to use it, and they just changed your entire reality. We are being forced into a dissociated state, and we
Yeah.
have been kept in a dissociated
Yeah.
state. And when you reach that, and just to pull the veil back, you and I were talking about this, you reach a point in a dissociated state when you are overwhelmed by this and you live in it and your system just sort of goes down this level. A part of you wants to lash out. A part of you wants it to just fucking burn down because you don't give a shit at that
Yep.
point. And another part of you like wants to get small and just not deal with it and go back to whatever. And quite frankly, we talk about addiction all the time. Those addictions help you stay in that state. And so now, as things are turning up, I want to invite people who are watching or listening to this, think about how you have felt in your body over the past week.
Mm.
And it helps to take out a piece of paper. And I promise you, like this is worth your time. Keep track of how you feel. Keep track of what that is. And what happens when you keep track of it is you realize, oh my God, I have not been
Well,
myself.
yeah.
I have not been present. All of this stuff overwhelms me and keeps me from doing this. It's like a magnet. And even if you hate Trump, even if you hate MAGA, even if you understand what's going on, unconsciously you can get drug into this. And that state, whether you like it or not, makes it where you can't fight it and you can't feel better. And you get drawn into this emotional vortex of that insanity that you and I are talking about. Like, whether you want it or not, it happens. And that is why this thing is so powerful, is because it happens unconsciously all the time.
And I'm telling you, like, exactly for that reason, the disassociating, the overwhelm, the combobulation, all of it is the reason why I went to work out today.
Right.
Like, it is the reason why I was just like, you know what? I feel like I am out here. Do you know what I'm saying? I am out here like floating and like fighting for my life.
I'm so glad you brought this up. For anybody who hasn't, I just saw this a couple of weeks ago. Go look up the chart of dissociation. Go look up the levels of it and see how it resonates with you. There's like a certain point where you feel like you're not living your life, where you
Yeah.
find yourself saying things, or you don't feel tethered to your body, or you're just watching a movie that's taking place. What you just brought up is essential in all of this.
Because it felt yesterday, genuinely felt like here I am, Jared, like up there float, and I'm trying desperately to pull my hope, to pull my spirit, to pull my energy back into my body.
Yes.
Right. And I said, okay, sometimes what I need to do as a person that is never stops fucking thinking and never stops fucking talking is just do physical activity that allows me to like feel again.
Yes.
And so I encourage folks, like, on top of what you are speaking about, writing down, journaling through this moment. How am I feeling on a day to day basis so that you are literally tapping into yourself and not just mindlessly moving through your day? Is that I encourage folks to also do some somatic work to get in to your body again, right? So for those that, even if you are not completely able-bodied, even if you're able to like sit and put like squeeze, right? Just like squeeze
Hug
for a
yourself.
little bit
Do one of
to
these.
the tapping,
Yep.
to just and breathe, right? If you're not able to physically move in that way, in terms of like exercise in that kind of way, try to connect and get into your body and out of your mind daily, on top of like the journaling, so that you are in touch with your feelings and not just moving through the motions. Because what they want is for us to turn into these mindless, depressed, oppressed, suppressed beings that are just like too exhausted, too hopeless to do anything other than survive.
Yep.
And that's the place that we are getting ourselves into. And that's how they will ultimately win.
100%. And everything and I always need to say this because we're sitting here in a live stream. We have a few hundred people watching, and thousands more will watch this before it's over. Like, that gives us authority because we know about this stuff and we think about this stuff. We both struggle.
Yes,
We both
on a
struggle
regular
like
basis.
hell. I've spent the last few days like fighting sort of a battle back and forth between that. Like, there's so much stuff going on. And at the same time, like, I have to take moments and be like, oh, there it was. I dissociated for a while there. Right. Or I had, I can't remember what day it was. Like, when I got on here,
Yeah,
like
you were like,
before,
did we talk last week?
right. Like, I looked back and I was like, "Oh my god, like, when did this happen or when did this happen?" That is that's a marker. You know what I mean? Where, like, you really can't remember, like, the sequence of time. I had a day a few days ago. I start off every day. I have a little daily reader that I read. I do a journal. I do a mantra. I sort of like take an inventory of myself and I just say a little prayer to the universe. When I do that immediately, I grab my coffee, I sit down and I do it. A few days ago, I didn't do it until like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. What happened that day? You know what I mean? Like, there was
Yeah.
something going on
Yep.
that I didn't feel like I could at that point. And so if I wasn't able to do that, and if someone just heard us say, journal about this or write about it, like, think about why that is. Why is
Yeah.
it hard to do that? It's hard to do that because you're in one of those states. And what we're doing right now is the same thing. I don't know how many times I've said it or someone I've known has said it. They're like, oh, I just need to get through this week. If I just get to next week, it'll be okay. That's how we're living life.
Week to week, day to day,
Week
hour
to
to
week,
hour.
day to day, hour to hour. And the antidote to this is not just mindfulness, it's recognizing the things that give us joy, the things that give us, grounding, the things that keep us moving forward. And right now, if you are not careful, because I I I, I want to avoid oversimplification, Danielle,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
only way that I can explain it is that when shit like this happens, there's like a big dial that just gets turned up, and it's like because our media is pumped about it. They're
Oh
so pumped
yeah.
about it.
Because they have constant content.
Constant content. You know who was most excited outside of Twitter and the Republicans? CNN.
Yeah.
CNN gets fucking pumped because it's the only time someone watches CNN is when a big crisis happens. And it's churning this stuff out. And it goes back to Trump and Crowder and Jones and even Kirk's widow. Those people, they're doing a more overt version of what others are doing,
Yeah.
but it's not as loud. You
Yeah.
know? It isn't as out there because they're not, like, at the level of those people, but it is still taking place. And again, the antidote is to avoid doing that. It's to think about humanity and yourself and your life.
And you know what? When you speak about volume and you're talking about how loud it is, this is one of the reasons I too take time to meditate, to be quiet, to be in nature because everything is so loud. And again, that is part of the terrorism. That is part of the discombobulation. And so when I say, when people are burning books and trying to take away your access to education, what you should be doing now is reading. When people are amping up the volume so that you don't know which way is up and left from right, go get quiet, right? When you are feeling so disconnected from yourself, literally tap in. When you are feeling like everyone around you is out to get you, go be in community, right? Like the antidote is in front of us. It is the opposite of what they are presenting.
The opposite action, yes.
You have to do that. And you have to be conscious of doing that. This takes extraordinary work these days. Because yesterday, I wanted to lay in the fucking bed and
Yep.
pull the cover over my head and have a bottle of wine next to me and like just put on Netflix and just let it run. I don't even need to look at it. Right? Like that was the mood that I was in. I didn't do any of those things, but I understand when people get into that place and in that state. And what you have to do is force yourself to do the opposite. When I want to be alone is when I reach out, right? When I want to scream is when I get like quiet and still. Right? Like those are the things that, thank God for therapy. But even my therapist says, I don't have the skill set for this fucking moment. I wasn't trained in the apocalypse, right? Like, and how to help people through it. And so I feel like you have to do the opposite of what's being given to you in order to stay sane in the asylum.
I'm so glad you brought this up, and I just want to say this before we finish up. So, two things that I wasn't going to talk about on this because everyone always says to me, "What is it I can do?" We have to form collective action. We have to engage in solidarity. That's a process. Well, let me give you a couple of things that you can do today. So, first things first, Danielle. I I I used to be an English professor. I used to be a writing professor. I still write. Like I'm writing stories. I write books. I do
Do
all
you
of
have
this.
one of those blazers with the patches? Because I imagine you in one.
How dare you? How dare you? How
You do, don't you?
so moving on. Um that is my background. You know what I loved doing as a kid? I loved reading. I loved losing myself in a book. You know what's hard for me to do right now? Read.
Mm.
One of my favorite things in the world, and it's hard to do because I am activated. And a second thing, my brain has been changed. Like our
Mm.
brains have literally been rewired. There's a reason why our attention works the way that it does now, which is that we are so impacted by this stuff. Right? I can research all day to write a book. I can research all day to write an article. When am I enjoying reading for fun?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
can sometimes, but it's a struggle and I have to retrain myself. The second part of this, you know what's upstairs from me right now? A
Mm.
sink full of fucking dishes that I do not want to do. I really I hate washing dishes, Danielle. I hate
Yeah.
it. But you know what? Every time I walk by that sink full of dishes, it bums me out. It makes
Mm.
me feel bad. If I just go ahead and do those dishes, I'm going to feel better.
Better.
I don't want
Yeah,
to do it. And it's a trap, right? I'm frozen because I don't have the energy to do the dishes. I don't want to do the dishes. But if I do the dishes, I will have the energy after that,
right.
right? So, what am I going to do today? I'm going to wash the fucking dishes.
Yeah.
I can't fix our media. I can't bring down the tech oligarchs. I can't defeat Donald Trump today. I can't do that today. I can take steps towards it, but also I need to do the fucking dishes and I need to pick up a book and read it and not check my phone and not do other things. Those are the small little battles that you have to fight and they are steps leading up to the other things.
And I'll tell you that a friend of mine who passed away 2 years ago during COVID said to me, I was like losing it. And we were only maybe like 2 or 3 months into 2020. And I was just like not mentally and emotionally, I was breaking down. And she was like, Danielle, you need to stop being in the news, reading nonfiction. Why don't you find a good fiction book? Get lost in like another world, another space, another place. And she introduced me to who has now become my favorite author, which is Nnedi Okorafor.
Mm.
And she is an African futurist writer. And when I get into because somebody asked me yesterday, like, what do you do when you finish your shows? Like, you have so much energy and emotion and your cortisol and all of these things. Like, what do you do to like bring yourself down? And yesterday a friend was coming over for dinner. So we had like a wonderful time. But some days I put my phone on do not disturb for a good hour and I read. and I get lost in another world, on another planet, in another space, and in another place. Because again, the thing that autocracy robs you of is imagination, right? Is the ability to think outside of what is in front of you. Because you're so, again, busy trying to survive, you can't imagine anything else. It takes away, it robs us of our creativity, right? And I think that being able to connect into fiction books, into some type of description, some type of other world, is not about detaching, but it's about like creating generative synapses in our mind that are dying, right? They're not pulsating in the way, they're not firing in the way that they are because we're so stuck in survival mode.
Absolutely. And I just want to say I'm so glad for you to share that. It made me realize something, which is I have a friend who died during COVID too. Way too early. Had a young son, a family. One of the sweetest people I've ever met. He loved music. Loved music. You know what he would love to do? He would love to listen to music now. You know what I mean? And for me, I'm like, I love music, but I just haven't had a chance to listen to it lately.
Mm,
You have to be aware of it. You cannot take this for granted. And we have to live a life the type that we want because no one's going to live that for us. And we have to live and quite frankly, the main existential problem now is you're dealing with millions upon millions of people who are not living lives that they would want to live. They're not living lives, they're ruining lives at this point.
yeah.
Well, Danielle, I appreciate you so much. I'm so happy that we got to do this, and I'm just so grateful for you.
I'm so grateful that every week, instead of going through the headlines, we go through our feelings. Because I think that even if for, the suggestions and the offerings that we're giving to people, even if this is the only moment that you have, like, use this, right? Like, and I'm so grateful that we continue to do this, that we continue to unpack the heavy things and find and our solutions that are tangible for us in this moment. So
Uh,
I appreciate you, my friend.
I appreciate you too, and just to model things, I'm going to text you in a few days and see that you're taking care of that self. Okay.
Yes, thank you. I already signed up for another workout class for tomorrow morning. So like, the goal this week is 3 days and then we'll go from there.
All right, you got this. Everyone watching it, you got it. We'll see you next week. Bye,
See you
everyone.
next week.